Hello world and true believers. This is Brenda, a lost Aspie girl, and I want to make this video because yesterday Will Levy commented on the fact that he noticed some of us Spectrumites or neuroatypicals were kind of what he felt was neurosocial bashing. And that's not my intent for these videos, and nor for my comments. So this got me to thinking a little bit, and I decided today I wanted to do a couple exercises with you guys, and if you're willing to play along. Okay, so the first exercise is, let's imagine there's a alternative universe, and in this alternative or parallel universe, things were kind of opposite of the way they are here. Instead of being 68 neurosocial, the neurosocial brain to one of one of us on the spectrum are neuroatypicals, it's the other way around, and we are the majority, and it's 68 of us to one of the neurosocial. So if it was this way, of course, like just as we are, the neurosocial mindset exist on a spectrum. There are those that are very high functioning or above average intelligence, and there are those that are lower functioning. So of the 1 in 68, there is going to be just as many that are, there's going to be a large percentage of those that are lower functioning. So in this world, imagine, growing up in this world. So you're a child, and first, you start to grow up and you start to realize, that your parents, you sometimes maybe want to cuddle with them or snuggle with them, but your parents are of the Spectrumite variety that don't like to be touched. Like it's not that maybe your mom doesn't want to be nurturing with you, but she doesn't necessarily know how. And she doesn't grow up in a world where that is even necessarily the norm. So you maybe want to cuddle and you have these urges, but your parents aren't able to fulfill them. And on top of it, when you try to talk to them, inside of you, you feel like the type of eye contact, like you seek out eye contact or facial expressions or things like that inside of you, something tells you that you should be getting this additional information from that, but they're not giving it to you. They're not either making eye contact with you at all, or their eye contact is too intense and it's confusing, and the words that they use is just face value, but there's something that wants you to read meaning into what they're saying, but it's not there. And this is very confusing to you. And this is the first few years of your life. Then you start school, and maybe school starts out the way it feels kind of okay to you, like learning all the basics and things like that. It's more of a classroom structure. But then as you get a little bit older, things start to change, and the classroom's based more like people are just focused on, like the teacher just kind of allows them to focus on what they're obsessed with and allows them to go in that direction, and they get one-on-one attention, and you want to kind of like, you go over to one kid and you maybe like, hey, can you help me out with this? And the kid's like, what are you talking about? Just figure it out yourself. And then you go to the teacher and you're like, what is it that I should be learning? And the teacher's like, well, what do you like? What do you want to learn about? And you're like, well, I don't know, like, well, why don't you tell me? What are my options? And the teacher's like, you need to figure that out yourself. What is your passions? Do you like to paint? What is it? And maybe there's a couple things you like, but it's not, but you feel like you need, there's something inside of you that says, I need some direction. Can you teach me? And the teacher's like, there's some books in the back of the class. There's some videos on people doing this or that. Like, why don't you read those books or watch these videos, or just whatever it is that you need is available to you, and utilize them, to whatever need that to your desires. And you're getting kind of confused because you want her to or him to instruct you, and then, it's like recess time, and you go and you want to socialize with some of the kids, but you realize like the schoolyard's kind of quiet. Like maybe there's some people playing, but for the most part, people are doing their own thing, and in various like places on the schoolyard. Some of the boys are just playing by themselves. Maybe some of the girls are in deep conversation. And when you go over, maybe like the boys don't even want to talk to you at all, whether you're a girl neurosocial or a boy neurosocial. But maybe because you notice that the girls are kind of talking to each other, you walk over to them and you're like, hey, how are you guys doing? And they look at you like you're crazy. And they're like, we're talking about this, and whatever topic they're talking about. Maybe it's about comic books, maybe it's about their favorite ponies, or whatever it is that they are obsessed and passionate about, and they're talking about that. And you want to join in. And they're like, if you want to talk about this subject, you can, but you need to, like, don't ask us absurd questions like how we're doing. That doesn't, and or maybe you come over and you're like, hey, how you guys like this weather? And they're like, it's the what, why, what? And they're like, this is what we're talking about. And then you start to listen to them and you realize that like each one does their own little soliloquy of they're talking about what they're talking about, and then the next one does the same thing, and they're not having this something inside of you that wants this like back and forth conversation that you're normally used to, where people are asking questions about personal things and asking you about your interest, and they're not doing that. They're just talking about what they like and waiting for the other person to talk and responding in depth about that. And that's it. And you're kind of confused and you're not able to relate to people, but you're trying to adapt because that's how everybody else is. And this is going along, and you start to feel yourself, like you go to the teacher, and every time they kind of push you away. They don't like it when you ask them personal questions. The teachers don't want you to ask questions about the things that you want to learn, because they're like, if you want to learn specific things, I'll tell you where to go to figure it out. But you need to figure these things out yourself. Because if you think about the way the Aspie brain works, we like to go and kind of do our own thing. And I think if there was a society based on us, people would be going off and learning their own thing. There would be some guidance to that, where the teacher would be like, if you like this, like helping out with specific things. But like overall, I don't think there would be like that the classroom based structured holistic learning that we have now. And so if you're a neurosocial and you're in this society, you're going to have to try to adapt and get by, but it would be kind of confusing to you, like all the things that inside of you that tells you that you want to communicate with people, like eye contact and facial expressions, everything like that. It would all be different than what something inside of you tells you is supposed to happen. And I think that, and I think that, like, so, and if this is happening, you're getting older, and there's nobody that's like you, nobody that thinks like you, nobody that, that wants to have conversations the way you want to have it, nobody that wants to connect to you the way you want to connect. Most of the people keep to themselves, they don't go out, maybe if they play something, they play it so intensely, like, that, but it's not about winning, it's about learning whatever it is that they're learning, but it's not about that, the way that the neurosocial brain performs these types of things. It's always slightly different than what it is that something inside of you craves. And you're growing up and you're trying to adapt, and you're feeling a lot of anxiety about this because you don't know how to connect to people. You're feeling very lonely, you're feeling a little bit confused, you're having a hard time in school, but maybe, you start to figure things out, and maybe you even start to excel because you figure out what it is you want to do. You go off and you learn all the books, and you think, like, when I get a job, it's going to be different. But, you get off, and you go to your first job, and you're like, okay, what is it that you want me to do? And the supervisor or manager's like, figure it out. Like, like maybe you go to a job and they're like, this is your role. And they're like, here's the SOPs, here's their whatever. Go follow these, figure it out on your own. And they're like, well, when should I have these done by? Well, as soon as you're done with it, just bring it to me. When time should I come in? Well, what time works for you? What is your schedule that works for you? Are you the type of person that needs to come in different times every day depending on what's going on? Are you someone that whatever will, and you're like, well, I don't know. I need to know what time I'm supposed to come in. And they're like, that's up to you, and you're doing all these things and it feels very uncomfortable to you, and you don't really know how to adapt, and nobody's communicating. Of course, around this time, you're starting to like whatever it is that you like, girls or boys, whether you're neurosocial or whatever sexual orientation that you are, and you go and you try to connect in there, and you find that most people either don't like to be touched, or maybe they're hypersexual and they like to be touched, but usually only when it comes to sex, and you're not able to have all that affection and to the way that you like it. Either it's too intense, the affection, they just want this, but it's short lived, people only want to talk about things, they only want to wax philosophical about things or talk about math. There's none of those types of cues and nuances that something inside of you tells you is supposed to be there for yourself. And I just want to know, like, if you lived in this world, wouldn't you start to feel a lot of anxiety and depression and sometimes despair? Wouldn't you struggle? And when you start to feel defective, even if no one was even telling you that you were defective, wouldn't you feel defective? So imagine if you also lived in this world, if you started to find out that there was a support group for people that were like you, the spectrum of neurosocials, and you went to these types of support groups to talk to other people that were similar to yourself. But you found out, just as we often do, that just as many people, that when you go there, it's only a small group of people, and a huge percent of them are lower functioning than you, and having to try to get along with them is difficult because it's such a small pool of people to meet from. And the people that you seem to get along with the most are the people, you start to meet people online, and they connect the way you do, but most of them live really, really far away. And like how would this affect your life and who you are? Like, would you be able to adapt? And if you did adapt, wouldn't that be exhausting to you? Would you find yourself sometimes having difficulties, maybe keeping a job or doing as well as you could in school? Even if you were very intelligent, if school was set up in that way, like how well would you do sometimes? Like maybe you would be able to. Maybe you would figure out a way, like a lot of us do, find coping mechanisms. Like I did when I was in school. I didn't learn as well from the teachers teaching in the class, so I would sit in the back of the class and I would read a book, and as soon as I would go home I would read all the stuff because I didn't learn from them talking. But what if it was set up that they didn't talk and they didn't lecture and they didn't do things like that? The way they taught, they wanted you to figure things out on yourself, figure out what your obsessions were, and then go in that manner. And they expected you not to have a surface knowledge of whatever, but they wanted you to have a really in-depth knowledge of whatever it is. And the way you learned is like you learned at your own pace and you passed things in, but there was no structure for you. Nothing was structured in the way you set up your own structure depending on maybe other type of because most of the Aspies are either they have a very scheduled way of doing things and they don't want it according to their schedule, or it's much more organic and they maybe like some days things are like depending on what phase they are, things are scheduled according to that way, and the teacher allows that because they know that they're going to work at their own pace and they're going to always learning is what motivates them. But because there's something inside of you that says you want structure and that's not given to you, you have to figure out another way of learning things. And this is the way the world is. I just want to know, like let's just play this exercise out for all you neurosocials out there. Like, how would that be for you? How would that affect you psychologically? Would you start to feel yourself feeling a lot of anxiety? Like, even if people didn't tease you, like if they just looked at you like you were insane or absurd for asking how the weather was or wanting to chat about your personal things or whatever, how would that make you feel? And and if I'm getting any of this wrong for any of the of you other Aspies and neuroatypicals or Spectrumites that are out there, please let me know because I'm actually writing about this and I want to get it right. So I would like your feedback because I want this exercise to be played out by both all you neurosocials out there and all you Spectrumites out there to see how a world like that would be. So that's the first exercise. I also want to do a second exercise where, okay, so now imagine that the world is like this, in this parallel universe. Do you think that a lot of and I'm not saying that world would be perfect, but a lot of the things that are problems now in this world, do you think that they would be the same over there? Because social values and stuff aren't the same for us. Do you think that wars would be the same? Do you think that global warming would be the same? Do you think that like right now, one of the things I have a problem with the way things run, okay, fluoridating the water. There are tons of studies now that show that fluoridating the water is toxic to the body and actually causes brain damage and various other things. Yet the government doesn't want to stop that. And I think that relates to ego, because I think the ego for neurosocials is different than the ego for us. Like we might if we feel strongly about something, we might push it. But the thing is like we don't mind being wrong if we are wrong. But I think a lot of times, like, the neurosocial brain has difficulties, like, because their ego is attached to these things. They don't like admitting when something is wrong, because then it makes them feel really badly. I think ego manifests differently in the two different mindsets. And I think sometimes that's where problems cause, because, like, okay, let's back up for a second. The guy that, and I talked about this in another video, that kind of, he was a doctor. It begins with S. It's like a weird name. It's German, I believe. He discovered, like, that he thought that people should hand wash after they do things, because he was working in a maternity ward, and the two different wards, the only thing that was different, one was handled by midwives, and that's all they did. The other one was done by medical students, and they were actually working on cadavers and autopsies and stuff like that before they would go and deliver babies. And those mothers and babies were dying, and he tried to tell the doctors about this going on, and the doctors didn't want to hear it. They actually felt offended by him pointing this out, and he actually died in a psych ward. And I think that things like that wouldn't happen as much because the way the Aspie brain works, or the Spectrumite brain, that don't have to. I don't think changes like that would take as long. Like, if there was enough data that showed, or if they looked at that, they would say, okay, this is causing a problem, let's not do it anymore. And I think, so my point is, and a lot of the comments that we're saying aren't meant to be pejorative or to neurosocial bash. It's just to saying, I think a lot of some of the problems that go on in the world right now that happen with war and things like that might be attached to some of these things. And this is why I say I think our mindset is a counterbalance. But one of the problems right now, I think, is the fact that there is only 1 in 68 of us in the population. And the fact of the matter is, because of the fact that we're looked at as a defect, some of the ideas that we have and the observations that we make are either misunderstood or not listened to at all, because of the fact that we don't have as much of a voice, and we're not really good at capitalizing or selling ourselves, basically. We're not good at playing those types of games. So like, I'm not even going to get into it more, but the second exercise is, I just want you guys try to imagine, if the world was run by us, what would be different? Because I don't think that all the anxiety and a lot of the psychological problems that we deal with now would actually be a problem. Because if we were just communicating with each other, let me even back up for a second. So let's go back to the first exercise. And if you're in neurosocial and you're like this and you're confused, you would actually be the person who's mind blind. It wouldn't be us, because the way we would communicate with each other would be direct, and we wouldn't be depending on all the things that the neurosocial brain depends on. So it actually, if things were reversed, your mindset would be the one that would be considered mind blind, not us. So the only reason these terms are used on us is because we are the minority, not the majority. But again, if we were the majority, I just want you guys to play out that scenario for a second and imagine what would be different in the world if we were. First of all, I don't think that we would have the anxiety, because those things only come because of the fact that when we're in school, we're ridiculed, we're told that the way we think is wrong, we're forced to adapt, and it becomes exhausting to us. It's not that I'm saying that we're more logical, it's just that our logic presents itself differently than the neurosocial brain. And it's not that we can't walk into bubblegum at the same time, Will Levy. It's just that in this world right now, we're forced to adapt to your mindset. And I'm just saying, if things were reversed and you were forced to adapt to ours, it would be more difficult to you, because communication is such an integral piece of any type of a society, that if our communication methodology was the mainstay, then things would be quite different than they are now. And if you were of the minority, you would be the one having difficulty communicating. The neurosocials out there would be the ones that would be considered mind blind and having difficulties. And I don't even know, like, if we were in the majority, would we look at you guys as defects? I don't know. I can't say that, because it's mere speculation. But it is an interesting exercise. Unless we could wonder right now, what would the world be like if we were the ones in control? I don't think that we would have anxiety. I think a lot of the things that depression and despair and a lot of things that we deal with right now would not be a problem, because I think those only start to occur because of the fact that we have to struggle with adapting to the neurosocial brain. So, I want you guys to play those two exercises out. Imagine how would that go if you're on the spectrum. Imagine that world for yourself. If you're neurosocial, imagine what that world would be like for you to live in. And would you experience anxiety? Would you get depressed? Would you get frustrated? Would you lash out? Would you get fired from your job or be on disability? Okay. And like this, and also like the second exercise is wonder, like, would some of the problems that we have now, would racism, would would all the wars, would all those things be as much of a problem? Because we like to focus on ourselves and our obsessions. So would we even care about any of those things? Would those things be as significant as they are now? But there are probably a whole slew of other problems that would come up, and we can think of those and speculate on those. But we really don't know what would happen unless that was actually the case. So I wanted to do that. I also want to make. I'm actually going to make another second video today because I printed out my my Girl Warrior, a couple of chapters of my Girl Warrior, and I wanted to kind of share a little bit of that with you guys. And I also yesterday I went on. I had that. I did the second part of the study. It was just the second part of the intake assessment. I was going to talk to you guys about that, but I just wanted to do that for right now. And let me know what you guys think. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Toodles.